is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it? I'm the Doctor. Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
Small off-duty Czechoslovakian traffic warden.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Alright dudes, it's time for another episode of It's Time to Rewind. I am known as Bubbawheat. Not the Bubbawheat, not first name Bubba, last name Wheat, just Bubbawheat. This season is Red Who, where I'm covering British sci-fi like Red Dwarf and Doctor Who, and joining me 3 million years in the future via the TARDIS is my guest Tony Cogan. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, and I am excited. This is the last of the classic Doctors that we are covering today, and specifically we are talking about Remembrance of the Daleks, which was the first serial of the 25th season of classic Doctor Who, featuring the Seventh Doctor Sylvester McCoy. It originally aired in 4 weekly parts, starting on October 5th, 1988. But before we jump into today's episode, I would like to know what is your history with Doctor Who and classic Doctor Who?
Yeah, so for me with Doctor Who, it's really a bit of more of a family thing that got me into it. It's like my dad and my uncle were really into Doctor Who when they were growing up, and when in 2005 of the revival, I was like pretty much exactly the right age for the revival to make a big impact on me. I was 10 when that came out, and so like for a lot of people my age, the revival was my introduction to Doctor Who properly. But I did know a lot of it bit through more cultural osmosis and stuff like my dad and uncle were telling me about their memories growing up watching Doctor Who, and so when the revival came out, and I got really into the revival, like watching it. That was one of the ones where me and my family would watch it every week as it came on. It was always a big thing at Christmas, watching the Christmas specials, and just having got good fond TV memories with family watching Doctor Who.
Nice, yeah. I've talked about it before. I've kind of came to the show late, and I am like almost completely fresh for all of these classic Who stories, and I'm honestly a little disappointed that it's ending. And but yeah, this is Sylvester McCoy, and this is the first outing in his second season, and his companion in this story is Ace. And whenever I started this serial, I do watch these over the course of 4 different days. I like to give each episode a little bit of time to breathe, and I will say that after the first episode, I did not like Sylvester McCoy at all. What's your thoughts on Sylvester McCoy as the Seventh Doctor?
Well, it's on here because of the classic Doctors. Sylvester McCoy is my personal favourite, because when I was getting into classic Who, watching classic serials, Sylvester McCoy was the first one I watched. It was first going into him about 2007, 2008, I think. And me and my dad, we did a quick little thing together. We did a tour of the BBC studios, and as after the end of it, you went through the shop, and they had, like, at the time, all the classic Doctor Who serials on DVD. I mean, the ones that were released on DVD anyway. And decided to get one of them as start getting into classic Who. And the one that I chose was Remembrance of the Daleks. And it's always led to Sylvester McCoy having the strong impression on me. But it's also one where, as I've gone back watching more of his serials, especially from Remembrance of the Daleks onwards, as he starts to evolve more of the chess master persona, the the planner, the one who gets everything up, arranges everything before he even starts. Like, this is the kind of incarnation of the Doctor. I like this, like, more inventive and mischievous to some extent Doctor and mysterious figure that. And I always found that, especially with like the revival area, going a bit more into the backstory and personal stuff of the Doctor, that's tended to be the areas that I've identified less with, but having this more mysterious figure with McCoy's presence and him playing like the clown with the serious edge to him, this is what that's the kind of film that I really like for the Doctor.
Yeah, and I do think that it was kind of fascinating because I think that's, we talked just a little bit before we started recording that, I posted about watching this on Threads, and, it was, I think, my initial reaction of Sylvester McCoy that I did not care for him. And, even coming off of Colin Baker, who is kind of, aside from the Big Finish work, he's typically thought of as like the least favorite Doctor. And I thought in the first episode of this serial, like, he was very bossy and abrasive. And then, I posted that, that kind of negative opinion, and I got a lot of feedback about, him and Colin Baker, because I referenced him in the post. And then I watched the second episode, and the second episode has this, great introspective conversation that he has at the diner with Joffrey from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And, that kind of went a long way towards warming me up towards him as the Doctor. And then by the end, there's a lot more of the mischievousness of, what he's planning, and his like planning, and not telling everybody everything, but also just him being kind of devious as well. That really won me over by the end of this serial, and I think that was like kind of an interesting arc to go on, and I'm not sure if it would have come through as strongly had I watched all 4 episodes in one go.
Yeah. I remember when I first watched this story. I was kind of the same way. I was thinking it did take that little while to get used to him. It was that very bossy, abrasive figure. But as the story went on for me, and we started to see how this version of the Doctor, arranges everything, goes on the plans, and he really does present himself as the fool for a lot of it, to hide his darker side. And that's kind of stuff as the story went on, and seeing more of the darkness of McCoy's Doctor come out, especially in the final episode of the serial. That's really stood out to me.
Yeah, that was another thing that did kind of surprise me. And I think it's interesting, because to me it feels, this episode kind of connects the Seventh Doctor for me to the 10th Doctor, where I am in the modern Who, watch through. Because I'm kind of stalled out on Blink, because I know that's like, a very well regarded episode, and also one that my wife and older daughter are both interested in seeing with me. And so it's a lot easier to watch these episodes by myself than it is to, get everybody around and spend the hour watching it together, because we tend to kind of scatter throughout the house. And so I'm kind of stalled, because everybody wants to watch Blink, but it's hard for us to get together to all watch Blink. But I think just a couple episodes previously, there's that David Tennant episode with the alien race that's like wanting to live forever, and At the
the
Yes.
family of blood, and I say that human nature, the family of blood, and that's actually an interesting one because that story started out as one of the books for Doctor Who, and the Doctor of that one was originally Sylvester McCoy. It was the Seventh
Oh,
Doctor.
that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I haven't been reading very much into like any of the Doctor Who lore or anything, and like we'll get into it a bit more, because I'm just kind of reading through the Wikipedia articles on some of these episodes, and apparently, this one, Remembrance of the Daleks, has a ton of Easter eggs, which, were completely lost on me as someone that's just kind of cherry picking throughout the classic Who. The only thing that I really got was because the last serial that I watched was Revelation of the Daleks, so I did at least get to that connection. Like, I saw the cream-colored Daleks, and I did immediately think that these were Davros's Daleks, but, I, like 3 episodes in, I started thinking, okay, well, maybe they're not going to bring Davros into it, and then in the 4th episode, the one Commander Dalek in the Imperial, yeah,
The Emperor Dalek.
and then it is exactly Davros's head from Revelation. There's so many blank of the Daleks that it's easy to get them confused.
It's not just like blanks with Daleks, it's blanks words starting with R.
Right. But yeah, that Family of Blood episode of David Tennant, that ending, with him like coldly doling out these punishments to the various family members, like allowing them to live forever, but in these like prison.
Yeah, I mean it's that line. That's not like that line in the episode that always like pretty chilling one. Like, we wanted to live forever, so the Doctor made sure that we did. That is a chilling line.
And this one, like, the Doctor, his plan from the beginning was to destroy Skaro and its son. Like, I feel like there's been several episodes dealing with the genocide of the Daleks as a race, and I don't think this is the first one. Is this the second one?
I think so. But I can't remember off the top of my head.
Because I believe that I want to say that that the one that I heard about there is like a Tom Baker story.
Yeah, that was what's that one? Is that Genesis of the Daleks, if I'm remembering it right?
Yeah, and
that was the one with the Doctor going back to the creation of the Daleks and having that option of whether or not to destroy the Daleks before they even start.
Yeah, and I'm guessing in that one he chooses to spare the Daleks. Yeah, so and that one he chooses to spare the Daleks, and this one he chooses to destroy the Daleks, and then I think in the Eccleston one he chooses to save the Daleks again.
Yeah. It's also interesting how and then you also have in I'm not going to spoil because you're going through it. Well, it's just interesting to see how we get different Doctors in the modern era and how they have different ways of reacting to the Daleks and whether to destroy them or keep them alive. And that's some interesting stuff that's going to be coming up in episodes that you'll be watching soon.
Yeah, I do think that's kind of interesting that there's, that the Daleks keep coming back and they're such a weird enemy because they're and I talked about it a little bit on the last episode because they're such a weird choice for a villain because they are kind of like the Doctor refers to them as is one of the most feared races in the entire universe, but they're just these like weird little cylinder tanks with barely mobile guns, and for the longest time there was always the joke that all you have to do to get away from is to run up the stairs, and apparently this one is it does have that moment. This, I guess, is the first moment, according to what I read in the Wikipedia, of them being able to go upstairs to kind of address that joke.
Yeah, I think it's like the first time it's blatantly obvious that we see the Daleks flying, but this is also the era where Doctor Who was not being as recognised by the general public. So even though it was a revival era, it was still the jokes of Daleks can't go upstairs, and they actually used that to good effect in the first Dalek episode of the Christopher Eccleston era. But yeah, it was still, even at that point, it was still operating on the assumption that general public, all they know is Alex is they can't go upstairs.
Yeah, but I feel like they're still fairly laughable as far as how easily defeated they are in general. They keep talking about how it's impossible to defeat them, and then they defeat them. Especially like how limited it's. Even we'll get to it in kind of the climax of this series, but in Eve of the Daleks, there's the one moment where the one companion is just like running around the Dalek in circles, just out because he can run around the Dalek faster than the Dalek can rotate, so he can avoid the gun that way, which he does for a little while until he doesn't.
Yeah, it's also interesting we found different ways to make the Daleks objects of ridicule, even when after they've been shown in more terrifying and sinister components, even they're still used as objects of mockery.
Yeah, even in this episode, he defeats the jumping to the end. He defeats the one Dalek basically just by confusing it to death.
Yeah, it's basically talking Dalek into killing into suicide.
Yeah, which that's it's not entirely clear what he's doing, and it just feels like like I said, it feels like he's just confusing him to death, almost like whenever you there's been like several instances whenever you confront like a fully artificial intelligence with a paradox, and that causes it to error out and shut down or destroy itself.
and yeah, also then this episode is also making fun of and showing that sort of weak. We also get the probably most iconic moment of the episode of Ace just wailing on a Dalek with a baseball bat.
Yes, and yeah, and I was actually about to bring up Ace as a character next, because Ace is my favorite classic companion out of the ones that I've seen so far for this project. I love her. She's just like this 80s punk rocker as far as I can tell, just wandering around with this backpack with the baseball bat sticking out of it, carrying a giant 80s era boombox, and I just love her so much.
And the backpack has got at least 2 bombs in it.
Yes. Absolutely, and the fact that that I think that was like the favorite moment of the first episode, whenever like the doctor's asking her if she has any Nitro 9, and she's like no, and then they get to the point where they need it, and the doctor's like, "Can I have the Nitro 9 that you don't have?"
Yeah, whenever I watch it, that bit always gets a laugh from me.
Yeah, and I am kind of curious, and you probably have the answer, because this is like this isn't the first time where I've wanted to watch more episodes with this version of the classic Doctor, but this one, it's like I specifically really want to watch the episode where Ace is introduced, because I am really curious how that partnership came about, because Ace is like such a dichotomy from the Doctor. It's like, how did these two personalities ever meet up and decide to travel with each other?
Yeah, I think it's been quite a while since I watched the introduction of Ace, so I'm not going to say what it is, because I don't want to misquote it, so I can't fully remember it. But yeah, get some really interesting stories with Ace in future episodes. I think the ones after this one, The Curse of Fenric, is a really good one for Ace. And you can also kind of see Ace as a bit of the prototype for, in some ways, to the modern companions, like coming from a contemporary Earth, like all human ones, and yeah, you can see a bit of the prototype for the modern companions to some extent with Ace.
Yeah, I do feel like the companions that I've seen so far, which I'm only really 2 companions in, with just a touch of Donna Noble, who I know does become a companion later, but in her introductory episode she is not very capable. But Rose and Martha are both very capable in assisting the Doctor in various ways, and they're not just like along for the ride. They're not a coming to an example of the episodes that I've seen. They're not a Victoria, from the Victorian England, who, at least in the episode I saw, was mostly just kind of damseling for the episode.
Yeah. I feel like always you can think of like Aces as definitely felt modern who decided like this proactive trend for the companions, at least in how it evolves into what we see for companions in New Who.
Yeah, and I also appreciated it, at least at this point in the story. I don't know if it progresses as they spend more time together, but I do appreciate that their relationship is fully platonic at this point, and so much so that she has this she has these moments with with one of the soldiers, where Smith, yeah, where she has romantic interest towards Smith, rather than having the romantic interest towards the Doctor.
Yeah, and that's something I've never really liked with Modern Who, is the idea of the romance between the Doctor and one of the companions. I prefer the Doctor not to have this romantic side to him. Like, there are sometimes instances I've liked Doctor kind of interactions, including with River Song, and that's particularly more in the Matt Smith era. But yeah, in terms of like the main companions, I'm like, that's always something that's never quite sat right with me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And then, kind of jumping back into like the storyline of this, I do think that it's interesting. And, let me ask you, because, I didn't catch like any of these except for the Davros moments. Like, how much of the Easter eggs in this episode did you appreciate as someone who's at least a little bit more familiar with Classic Who?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it feels like stuff we get for like this was like really the 20th anniversary special of it, so a lot of it was going back to the original first episode, An Unearthly Child. So the main setting is the same, like we get like setting in Coal Hill School and Totter Lane Junkyard, and we see Ace really pick up one of the books that Susan reads in An Unearthly Child. Now, it's interesting because I can't really talk about how there's almost wanting to go back and watch An Unearthly Child before this in order to get a bit more of the Easter eggs. But due to something issues going on with one of the people involved with the rights for An Unearthly Child, that episode isn't available on BBC iPlayer in the UK. So a lot of the stuff Easter eggs picking up was just general memories, and also there's some stuff that is also callbacks that were done in New Who era. There's like in the like current era of Doctor Who, they keep going back to Coal Hill School and bringing that up. Even one of the spin-offs with Class is like centered around like the school, and it's just interesting as it's because it's one where the Easter eggs, they never really like at the forefront, at least is not blatant and distracting from the story. It's an interesting odd that it's set in the same locations as An Unearthly Child, but as someone who, when I first watched it, I didn't really pick up on the Easter eggs. It's one way where you can easily, it's like the story isn't reliant on them in order to function.
Yeah, and watching it the first time, whenever she picked up that book, I did recognize that as something, but I didn't know what it was. I was just thinking, oh, that feels like it has to be a reference to something, but I have no idea what that is a reference to. And then I did also catch the reference to the Brigadier.
Yeah.
Because that is a character that's, I haven't seen, I skipped over his episodes, but I did, starting this, I did go through the first couple seasons of the Sarah Jane Adventures, so he does show up in one of those episodes, so I was, familiar with him as a character.
Yeah. I think in terms of like the Easter eggs, probably the most overt jokey one is the bit when Ace turns on the TV in the boarding house and it's the BBC about to show an episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah, I didn't catch that one either because I just wasn't clearly paying attention, and I think I missed whenever it cut off, because I didn't know what time it, because I think the time especially was referenced in the show as when it would normally come on. I imagine that was something completely lost to me, so I didn't catch that watching it myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also interesting because it's not just Easter eggs to Doctor Who, but you also get some Easter eggs for other British sci-fi from TV of earlier than Doctor Who, what stuff that preceded Doctor Who. There's this bit in episode 3 where they kind of talk about, say, I wish Bernard was here, and saying the British rocket group has its own problems, and that's a reference to the Quatermass experiment. And it's because really, you probably wouldn't have got Doctor Who, or at least the kind of modern sci-fi, or even to some extent the same kind of TV drama we got on BBC without the massive success that the BBC had with the Quatermass experiment. And it's one where probably it's more well known for the films that Hammer made, especially since the original Quatermass stories. At least the first Quate series of Quatermass, pretty much all of that, about 2/3 of that is lost, and there's really only the films that, in their entirety, have survived. But it's still interesting that we've got Doctor Who paying a bit of a tribute to its forerunner in British sci-fi TV.
Yeah, and then kind of jumping back to the rest of the story, with as far as the Daleks, we talked a little bit about the Daleks in general, but I did also like how I'm guessing that there were a bit more interesting designs in the Daleks. I like the different models for the two different leader Daleks. You have the one that's the chair with the motorcycle helmets, even though that was a little bit silly, but it designed for the little girl leader of the Daleks, which I was never, I figured that it was just mind control, and I definitely read that she was involved with the villains from the first moment she shows on camera, because they were not subtle with implying.
You don't have that little don't do that little leitmotif of the nursery rhyme if they're not going to be an important character, especially not one that creepy.
Right, yeah. But I think I was at least a little bit surprised that she wasn't just a scout, that she was the leader of the renegade Daleks.
Yeah. And it's also shown where even other Doctor Who stories in the rival area have used that same idea of the alien race is using children to kind of power their like war machines or their technology, because we got that in School Reunion as well, the episode which brought Sarah Jane Smith into the modern era, and the villain's plan was using children in not exactly the same way, but a similar way to the way the Daleks used the girl here.
Yeah, it also reminded me a bit of Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
But in this case, they kind of in the elements where they needed somebody small to fit into the Emperor Dalek or the leader Dalek chair, where an adult wouldn't fit in there. But the explanation they actually give in the story is that the Daleks are all logic, and they need to control someone that has imagination, and so a child is the perfect vessel for imagination, creativity.
Yeah, and is kind of what was using like those other stories as well. They always keep, whenever they bring that story up in elements up in Doctor Who, they always it's the imagination that's needed.
Yeah, and I also liked I don't know if liked is the right word, but I appreciated the different design for the Davros Emperor Dalek. The cream colored one with the big bubble on top, and I also like the heavy artillery Dalek.
The special weapons Dalek.
Yeah, I thought that was a fun slight tweak on the design.
Yeah, and it's also sort of where even like in other episodes they just kind of like just put the special weapons Dalek in the background of some other future Doctor Who episodes, but they've never really used that Dalek to the same extent as it was used here.
Yeah, I haven't seen, or at least I don't remember too many alternate Daleks in the modern Who that I've watched so far, other than I guess kind of spoiler, but the Empire State Building one, the one with Andrew Garfield is one of the episode, not regulars. I can't think of the one-off act
like this,
characters.
one of the supporting cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that one got bit too silly for my taste.
Yeah, and then we also have like the human element. Although I think like the two women scientists in this, I felt like they, even by the end, they, as characters, they realized that they were just unneeded, really.
Yeah.
Like they're just along for the ride. It's like, oh, he asked for our help, and all we're doing is carrying this thing downstairs.
Yeah, I mean, there were like a lot of the like supporting cast of this on were a bit flat. I mean, performances were like, at least for the adults, were doing the best of what they called, at least for the hero side of it. The more interesting supporting characters in this episode I found were coming from more of the villainous side of it. But yeah, the two like proto-unit scientists were, they did feel a bit flat.
Yeah, and then we have Ratcliffe as like the human villain who's working with the renegade Daleks, and Sergeant Smith, who's like, I guess, the double agent who has that kind of great moment. And I think the third episode where he reveals that he told the renegade Daleks or he told Ratcliffe about the Hand of Omega, or whatever the betrayal was. I did kind of like get a little bit lost on exactly what his betrayal was. And then we have the kind of great moments, or I don't know. I think it was a little bit overblown with with Ace kind of expressing her betrayal over Smith.
Yeah, but it's also interesting where when you know a bit more about Ace's backstory, you kind of understand why it's hit Ace a bit more, because a bit of the Ace's backstory is that a friend of hers was the victim of a racially motivated firebombing, and so finding out that someone that she's has thinking of having of how they've had some romantic feelings for is a white supremacist. That's more of the anger, where Ace's anger's coming from to me.
Yeah, and they do have, like, earlier on they have the hint of that, where he mentions that, his mom runs a boarding house, and that's where Ace is staying, and then she sees the sign that says no coloreds, and she flips that around.
Yeah. And you also get little hints of it with, so if I be a bit more hostile, I think that's the right word, thinking Ace wasn't from around those parts. They did plant the seeds of Smith being a racist, and it also creates the interest ties with the Daleks, especially with Radcliffe. As if you looking at what Radcliffe gives about his backstory and his whole design, he was most likely a black shirt, a supporter of Oswald Mosley, and a straight up Nazi.
Yeah, those kind of subtleties were lost on me, I think. Even though they do, it's definitely there, because they even kind of have the moment where the renegade Daleks are like the more pure Daleks, and the Davros Daleks, the Imperial Daleks, are the ones that have the extra bits and the cybernetic components. They're impure. I don't think they use the word impure, but that's kind of the implication, is they're like the impure Daleks.
Yeah, it's like the whole Dalek Civil War is pretty much a race war about the purity of the Daleks, and so it kind of makes sense that the Daleks' human allies would be neo-Nazis. And also interesting stuff was, like, at the time the episode was coming out, you have the rise of the National Front, and so obviously to creating parallels between Ratcliffe and his organisation with the National Front, and this is just demonstrate that all connecting together, and just a Nazi by any other name.
Yeah, and I will say, taking a step back and looking at it from that perspective, I do appreciate how it's Ace is the one that kind of explains it in the overly simple terms, into these blobby Daleks don't like the other blobby Daleks with bits attached to them.
Yeah. I mean, it works in selling why we've got the Dalek Civil War.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's about all I have to say about it. I did like the bit with the mothership and them. Although again, that was another instance of the Daleks being, comically easy to defeat, where the Doctor just zip lines into the ship with his umbrella, and the Daleks I can't disconnect from the ship, and then the Doctor just shuts him down
over the eye stalk.
Yeah, and then just disables him in the matter of seconds, while the Dalek is just kind of flailing around helplessly.
Yeah, I mean, it's also interesting, comparing it, the way the Daleks presented here, in terms of, and how they're presented in the revival era. The Daleks in the revival era are much more overly powered than, the shields we see on the Daleks are more explicit in terms of blocking bullets. Here, in numerous instances of, actually see the bullets fired the Daleks hit, and it's just the strength of the casing that stops them from being, anything more from happening. It's hitting the eye socket is what kills it. But even though
you say we see the bullets hit, we don't see any bullets in this episode. That was definitely a moment that I noticed. It's you see the gun being fired, and there's not even any they're not even firing blanks. It's just the sound effects.
We see things like Ace blowing up a Dalek with a rocket launcher.
Yeah. Which is, another reason why I love Ace so much, because she has moments like that.
Yeah, we've got three Daleks being destroyed with like plastic explosives after the Doctor immobilized them, and it's stuff like in like the modern era you wouldn't really expect that to happen, or even like the one Dalek being destroyed by the Nitro Nine. Like in like the new era, they are more like given more of an upgrade in terms of their defensive capabilities. So those kind of if they try them in with like the modern Daleks, most likely they wouldn't work.
Yeah, even though they do have the moment, jumping way ahead again to the eve of the Daleks, where they have the moments where two of them are defeated by ducking and allowing them to shoot each other.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, that's even something where like having two Daleks fire at each other or like somewhere between them. That's something that goes back to, like even it's like some of the comic takes on the Daleks. Like I remember this was maybe actually being my first introduction to Daleks, watching Looney Tunes back in action, where where some of the Daleks were shown in there, and they have I think it's like Bugs Bunny tricking Marvin the Martian into going in between two Daleks firing at each other. Although, from what I remember, that actually caused issues with the Doctor Who wanted to bring the Daleks back in because apparently there was some issues with the state of Terry Nation over the use of the Daleks in Looney Tunes back in action that had to be resolved first before they could be brought into the revival.
That's funny. I've never seen Back in Action, so it was completely lost on me. But yeah, I think that's, kind of wraps up this episode. Was there anything else that you wanted to say about this serial?
Yeah, a few interesting things is like obviously going back to like Easter eggs. We didn't just have like Easter eggs just for like previous Doctor Who and Quatermass, but also like an Easter egg for other like children's drama at the time with like the teacher that headmaster that's the Doctor Mace interact with at the Coal Hill School was one of the cast members who played like the headmaster in the very popular children's serial Grange Hill, who's probably more well known to general audiences for playing Hitler in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So even though like that came out after this one, there's still like interesting parallel of associations between the Daleks and Nazis.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and then also another interesting thing, just in terms of like behind the scenes stuff, is there's like you see a bit in this episode of the Doctor like jumping away from the Nitro 9 explosives, and it actually gets a view of instances of the Doctor like walking away from explosives in other episodes from the Sylvester McCoy era. Particularly the episode The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, which has a really cool shot of the Doctor just casually walking away from a massive explosion, which and if you watch the clips of that episode and of that explosion, it's interesting thinking the explosion went off too early and came close to seriously injuring Sylvester McCoy, but he knew that they only really had one option to actually do that take, or was with the BBC budgets of the 80s, even especially the slashed budget of Doctor Who, you couldn't really do anything more with that.
Yeah, like one last thing that I did notice in the Wikipedia article, that it did talk about the director Andrew Morgan. He was at least partially trying to outdo his last serial, Time in the Ranny, from the year before, and he ended up going over budget by about £13,000, and because of that, he was barred from directing the show again because he went so far over budget on this episode. But I think it was worth it. I think this is a great serial, and unless you have any other, more final thoughts, I will kind of go into like my ranking for this, well, I guess for the classic, the entire run of the classic Who episodes that I've seen so far for this show.
So, yeah, I mean, the last thing I want to talk about was just not really about this episode, but just in Doctor Who in general. Part of why this episode, in Sylvester McCoy as well, is what really stands out to me for Doctor Who. It's something that's happened more recently. Because for me, I currently live in Cheltenham in England and live relatively close to the city of Bristol. And every year in Bristol, they have a slapstick comedy festival. You usually get different guests from World of Entertainment, and British comedy, British media to take part of it. And there are quite a few Doctor Who connections to it. Like, one of the patrons of the festival is Paul McGann. And quite a few times that I've been to the festival and there's been some of the pubs around Bristol, I'm thinking, oh, that's Paul McGann. I wonder if he's here for something. And yeah, just see Paul McGann around. But one thing is that the festival this year, they were doing their guest of honour for working slapstick comedy and slapstick just in general. And this year's one was Sylvester McCoy. And so you saw quite a few events at the festival this year with Sylvester McCoy in attendance. And, even though you can see that he's getting on in the years, he still has that kind of mischievous twinkle in his eye. He was happily rushing around the audience as far as he was able to, playing the spoons at a few points. He was given the medal, he immediately did it as a monocle. And you also get some interesting stories talking about his time on Doctor Who, this general experience he had on it, talking about even some of the slapstick traditions that were brought over into Doctor Who, how he's suffered earlier work in the Ken Campbell Roadshow with Bob Hoskins, and how that kind of stuff played into his more mischievous take on the Doctor. And it's just really fascinating to see the liveliness that Sylvester McCoy brought to the Doctor. You've still got that today.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, one thing that I have been doing on this series is I have been ranking these episodes or these series in terms of how much I enjoyed them, and so I will continue doing that. I'm not sure if I will continue that once next time going into Modern Who, or if I kind of want to keep those separate. I haven't decided yet. So I guess I'll figure that out in 2 weeks whenever I get to that episode. But I did really enjoy this episode. I think it ranks pretty high, but I think I'm still gonna keep I believe Caves of Androzani as my top, the Peter Davison arc, and I think I will put this at number 2, Remembrance of the Daleks. I really enjoyed this. It was a bit of a slow start. I wasn't fully sold on it at episode 1, but by the end, it really won me over. I mentioned I absolutely loved Ace, and McCoy did grow on me pretty quickly as the Doctor after a rough first episode. And then I will go Carnival of Monsters at number 3, and then Revelation of the Daleks, then The Time Meddler, then Meglos, and Tomb of the Cybermen is still at the bottom. So I think that's kind of where I rank those. And do you have any thoughts? I know there's a lot of stories, and if you're not, depending on how familiar you are with them, some of them get kind of lost, because it's kind of a mix of I think there's definitely some of the best ones here that were picked, but also a couple that were picked for the time loop element. So this isn't like a best of each Doctor ranking. This is just the ones that were chosen for this series.
Yeah, because so for me, just in general thoughts here, I've probably, of the classic series that I've seen, I've actually probably previewed that the top two of the ones I've seen are Remembrance of the Daleks and Caves of Androsani. And it's always a bit of a toss-up for me over which one of those two I prefer. And I think a lot of it depends on when I watched it. But yeah, I think actually right now I'm thinking that I probably would agree with you of having Caves of Androsani at number one. It always stands out to me. But yeah, like thinking of the classic Who one, has been quite a while since I've actually properly watched classic Doctor Who, so I'll need to proper go back over it to really get my thoughts in order over which ones I prefer. But from the ones I've seen so far, it's those two that stand out to me.
Yeah, and I think that especially these last 3 weeks, I feel like they were definitely chosen as being kind of the top tier for each Doctor, and I think that really shows. Where the first 4 was kind of a mix of these are timey-wimey episodes, and Tomb of the Cybermen is kind of hit and miss because it's like very important lore-wise, but I didn't really get into the story of it. But yeah, that wraps up Classic Who on this show. Next week we have another Red Dwarf episode, and then the week after that I'm going straight into David Eccleston with the reboot series, the first reboot series. And now that the Disney Plus version is its own, it's considered another soft reboot. It's more of a soft reboot than where I think the Eccleston was a bit more of a hard reset.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the Eccleston, Christopher Eccleston one, that was even though there were the ties like to classic Doctor Who, that one was the clear intention of introducing Doctor Who to a new audience, and whereas like with the Shutikatwa era that was started into, that feels a bit more of a soft reboot, but with that one I have more blatant, obvious connections to classic Doctor Who, especially at the end of the series.
And thank you so much for joining me today. And why don't you take a moment and let people know where else you can be found online?
Okay, so you can find me online. My main site is Coog Reviews, where I post reviews of more recent films. Recently, done a whole search of reviews of films from this year's BFI London Film Festival. And you can also find my podcast, the Wickerman Podcast, where I do a deep dive into the 1973 folk horror classic, The Wicker Man. And you also find me around various other podcasts. Recently, I've done an episode of Lamcast, and recently on Deep Blue Sea, the podcast.
And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me everywhere on social media where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can also join our Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can discuss episodes as they come out. You can also have discussions and share memes about any other time loop TV shows, movies. It's all welcome there. And until next time, smoke me a kipper, and I will regenerate before breakfast next week.